What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with zero basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron. And ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is episode 3 of season 6, the 96th episode overall. We got a lot to talk about on today's show. A few topics that I want to get into. First, is Ja Morant on the verge of being traded? And then, how in the heck are the Bulls still the number one team in the Eastern Conference? And then, could the NBA be looking at relocating 2 franchises that are out in the Western Conference? So we'll get into all of that. But first, like I alluded to, let's talk about the Ja Morant trade rumors that have been circling for the past week since last week's episode. So I have a Bleacher Report article pulled up here that I basically want to go over, and then I'll give my thoughts and opinions after that. But it says Ja Morant trade market reportedly monitored by the Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings amid NBA rumors. So articles goes to say that multiple teams are reportedly keeping eyes and tabs on Memphis Grizzlies guard Ja Morant and the possibility of him being made available for trade. According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Sacramento Kings are both monitoring Morant's situation given recent developments between the two-time All-Star and the Grizzlies organization. Amick, I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly, but Amick named the Houston Rockets as a point guard needy team that is unlikely to pursue Ja Morant despite Fred VanVleet being out with a torn ACL. On Saturday, the Grizzlies announced that they had suspended Ja Morant for Sunday's game against the Toronto Raptors due to conduct detrimental to the team. Now, per ESPN's Shams Charania, Grizzlies head coach Izalu, I think is how you say his last name. It's Finnish, so I apologize. Izalu challenged Morant's leadership and effort following a loss to the Los Angeles Lakers, and the team felt that Morant, in quote, responded in a tone deemed inappropriate and dismissive. When subsequently asked to discuss his early season struggles, Morant told reporters to go ask the coaching staff. Morant returned from his one-game suspension on Monday, playing in Memphis's 114-106 loss to the Detroit Pistons. When reporters after the game asked Ja Morant if he felt the same amount of joy he usually does about playing basketball, he responded simply, no. The Grizzlies selected Ja Morant, obviously, with the number 2 overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft out of Murray State, and he has obviously had his fair share of ups and downs in his NBA career thus far. So the article goes on to finish, wonder if it'd be a change of scenery would be a good thing for Ja Morant, especially with teams like the Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings being, potential, suitors for Ja Morant should he be made available. But my personal opinion in all of this, to unpack, this news surrounding Ja Morant, he could be available for a trade or made available for a trade by the Memphis Grizzlies, but I don't necessarily think that would solve all of Ja Morant's problems. I don't think a change of scenery would necessarily do that for him. Now, he's had his issues in the past, like the article alluded to. Of course, he dealt with some issues with the league that conduct that the league felt was detrimental to the overall brand of the NBA. But he served his punishment. He served, I think, a 25-game suspension a few years ago. But like I just said, I have this feeling like his issues just may be deeper than what he's saying, deeper than the coaching staff, deeper than the environment of the Memphis Grizzlies. And I'm not trying to speculate when I say that, because I don't know Ja Morant. I don't know that man in real life, but I hope I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong. It's more than likely that I am completely wrong, but he said he doesn't have that joy in basketball right now. I just wonder if he's lacking some joy in his life as a whole. That could be a possibility. Again, like I said, I don't know, but it made me wonder reading that quote, and especially seeing I watched that post game chat that they had, and it does seems like he's a bit down. So I was just wondering if he's lacking some joy overall in his life. But so like I said, would a trade to either Sacramento or Minnesota, would a trade, make those teams a contender out in the very, very competitive Western Conference? And in the case of Sacramento, absolutely not. Of course, when you make a trade, you gotta give up something to get something, right? And the Memphis Grizzlies, I would imagine, aren't just gonna take nothing for Ja Morant. So you're gonna have to give up some sort of depth. Like, would that be Sabonis? Would that be Zach LaVine? Pretty sure DeMar DeRozan's still there, if I'm not mistaken. They're gonna want somebody. And the same thing for Minnesota. I fear you would probably lose some of your defensive depth. Memphis would more than likely try to get Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, and some significant draft capital. Are you willing to do all that for Ja Morant? Maybe they would be, maybe they won't. And, maybe his Ja Morant's trade value, that isn't that high, just like the Bleacher Report article had kind of talked about. But, a move to either of those teams, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's Sacramento, I don't think makes either one of them a legitimate contender in the Western Conference. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. So let's transition here. Let's go to the other conference in the NBA. Let's talk about the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls are still the number one team in the East as of the time of recording, 6-1. Last week I mentioned them in the rankings. They were 4-0, and they finally had their first loss. They lost to the New York Knicks. New York stand up, orange and blue skies. Beat the Knicks. Funny enough, in cup play in the NBA Cup a couple days before that, and then lost to the Knicks, a few days after. But I was worried that the Bulls were going to go 82-0. I thought they were just going to completely run the table for the entire season. I'm totally kidding. But, so far I was looking up the statistics. I was looking up why is this Bulls team playing so well. All I could see is, shout out to StatMuse. I love the way that they, organize the stats. But, they are top 10 in the NBA in points scored, rebounds, and assists. They are also third in the league in three-point percentage. They're shooting 40% from three-point range so far in the season. But I couldn't really find any other standout team statistics as to why they're winning. But individually, Josh Giddey leads the team in points and assists. He's averaging 23 points a game, 9 assists per game. Big Vooch, Nikola Vucevic, averaging 19 points, 12 rebounds. And then you have 4 out of the 5 starters for the Chicago Bulls averaging double digits in scoring. And this is all without Kobe White, who's a solid rotation piece for them. He injured his calf, I think it said in August when I was looking, but he is potentially coming back this month. I think he's going to be reevaluated next week. So that's another piece that could help the Chicago Bulls, continue to do well. But that brings me to my question. Do I expect this to last for the Chicago Bulls? Do I expect them to be number one for most of the season? Absolutely not. I do not expect them to keep this up. I do fully expect them to fall from grace. I'd be shocked if they ended up being a playoff team. I would say they're pretty much a bubble play-in team. Obviously play-in is between 7 and 10. I would think that they'd be on the ladder because that's what they've been for the past few seasons. Even, despite everything that we've seen so far, I mean, I don't see them, doing this come February, March, or April, personally. So, I mean, looking at the Eastern Conference right now, of course, yeah, they've got the number one seed, so they had the best record in the East, but I don't think they're a better team than the Cavs. I don't think they're a better team than the New York Knicks, than the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think they're better than them. When healthy, I think the Sixers could be better, especially with this, the emergence of BJ Edgecombe. I mean, he's been really solid so far. And even Boston and Orlando have potential to be better than the Chicago Bulls as well. Obviously, Boston's playing without Jason Tatum. if he comes back, I'm telling you, Boston could be a sneaky playoff team if he comes back. If Jaylen Brown and the crew can hold until then, obviously. But and then Orlando, I feel like Orlando will get better as the season goes on. They had some new pieces that they acquired that they are adding into the fold. But yeah, I don't think the Bulls are better than any of those teams that I mentioned. And this is really no shade against this Bulls team. I'm sure Chicago fans are not going to enjoy listening to this segment. They could very well prove me wrong, but I doubt it very much. But well, let's transition. Of course, we got one more story to talk about here. I wanted to talk about. Give me just a second. Let me get my. Okay, perfect. Here we go. So I wanted to talk about the NBA looking into possibly relocating two teams. So, of course, it's no secret that the NBA has been discussing expansion. There's two cities that always come up when expansion rumors are circulating: Seattle in Las Vegas. So I was reading this article here on, it was actually on profootballnetwork.com, but, they were talking about which two teams could end up being relocated. And this was actually originally came out from Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix, revealed that the NBA is considering expansion, but relocation has recently been discussed with two particular teams that play in small markets. Quote says, while expansion is the NBA's preferred method to get teams in Seattle and Las Vegas, relocation has been discussed, as NBA Commissioner Adam Silver told Sports Illustrated last month. Now, Chris Mannix in the Sports Illustrated article added, while no league official would come within 100 miles of publicly naming relocation candidates, the Grizzlies and the Pelicans, small market teams with arena deals that expire before the end of the decade, are often whispered as the most likely targets. So a little bit of history and backstory. The Grizzlies started out as an expansion team in Vancouver in 95. Stayed there until 2001. Then they relocated to Memphis due to the team's limited revenue generation in Vancouver. And then the Pelicans originally started out as the New Orleans Hornets in 2002 when the NBA relocated them from Charlotte. They then changed their name to the Pelicans in 2013, honoring Louisiana's state bird. But neither the article goes on to talk about, neither the Grizzlies or the Pelicans have consistently been among the best teams in the Western Conference. The Grizzlies have one Western Conference Finals appearance. The furthest the Pelicans have ever been is the Western Conference semifinals, both once in 2018 and then in 2008, and then in 2018 as well. But, with Adam Silver confirming that relocation has at least been discussed, if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan or you're a New Orleans Pelicans fan and you live in town, you live in Memphis, you live in New Orleans, you probably should be just a little bit worried. At least I would think so. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for small markets as a Spurs fan. For so many years, it's fun to watch the small market teams be successful. At least in my opinion, it is. And that's not just for basketball. That goes for multiple sports. I mean, heck, Oklahoma City is one of the smallest markets, if not the smallest market in the NBA, and they just won the championship. But there's a difference between places like San Antonio and Oklahoma City versus Memphis and New Orleans. And the difference comes into their storied history and a sustained level of success. Of course, Oklahoma City just got their first championship this year, 2025. But basically all throughout the 2010s, they were legitimate contenders. I mean, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, James Harden, they were solid. They really should have made the finals more than just the one time they did in 2012. But same thing goes for the Spurs. The Spurs obviously have been down more recently since, the late 2010s and pretty much most of the 2020s so far. But, the Tim Duncan era brought 5 championships between 99 and 2014. So 5 championships in about 15 seasons. There's a storied level of success there with that small market team. So, all that to say, there's been no level of sustained success in Memphis or New Orleans. They've had some good teams over the years, but they've never been true contenders, unfortunately. I think bringing back one of the franchises, or excuse me, I think bringing one of the franchises over to Seattle and reviving the Supersonics would be fun, because who doesn't love the Supersonics, right? I mean, the name is fun, the city of Seattle is cool. I think it would bring a huge level of excitement to the team and a league as a whole. Who says no to the Supersonics? Now, if they go the expansion route, obviously no harm, no foul. Everybody can stay where they are. But if relocation is the decision that ends up being made, I think being back in Seattle would be a win-win for everybody. But Las Vegas, on the other hand, on the fence about them having an NBA team personally. I know they do the NBA Cup semifinal and final there. At least they have been for the past few seasons. But I don't know. I'm on the fence personally about Las Vegas having an NBA team. But that's a story for another day. But nonetheless, it seems like relocation of the Memphis Grizzlies and the New Orleans Pelicans could be a possibility. Of course, there's no decisions that have been made, at least as far as the public knows as of yet. And it's always unfortunate. I don't want to be insensitive. It's always unfortunate for, fans to lose a team. I was actually just watching a Netflix documentary about the Montreal Expos. I had no idea that the Montreal had a baseball team. I know they left, they left in 2004. But anyway, hearing the fans talk about how much they miss having baseball in Montreal, it's not fun to see a team leave a city. But hopefully these next few seasons for the Pelicans and the Grizzlies generate some excitement, positive excitement, that is. But as it stands, things are looking pretty bleak for the foreseeable future for both franchises. But we shall see what happens. But let's transition. Final time here. We got to real quick talk about marquee matchups. Of course, marquee matchups are back. You play marquee matchups every weekend, you get a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card from me. So marquee matchups are posted tonight, or have been posted as of Thursday night. Probably listen to this on Friday. So you got until the evening to make your picks on either Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. I think those are the ones where I post, the teams. But last week, the marquee matchup was NBA Cup game between Boston Celtics, Philadelphia 76ers. Everyone picked the Sixers. Obviously, the Sixers were the safe bet, but Boston ended up pulling that game out 109-108. So no one won the full 3 points for the weekend. Only 1 point for all the participants. But this week, we've got the I-10 rivalry. Yes, the Texas rivalry. You've got the Houston Rockets taking on the San Antonio Spurs, also in another NBA Cup game. This game, I believe, will be Friday night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, if I'm not mistaken. But funny enough, these teams both have the same record now. San Antonio won their first 5, has lost the last 2. Houston, I believe, lost their first 2 games and then won their next 5 games. So both 5-2. So somebody's going to be 6-2 and somebody's going to be 5-3 after this one. But of course, I'm picking the San Antonio Spurs against the bum Houston Rockets. Like, come on now. But I think it'll be a good game. Of course, Houston has a chance to win. But I'm picking the San Antonio Spurs for this weekend's marquee matchups. Like I said, Friday night, Amazon Prime Video at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all the show I have for you fine folks. As I always say, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you could do all the good things like I talk about, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't really care at the end of the day. But follow the show at Another Turnover on all social media platforms and wherever you get your podcast. I would greatly appreciate it. But should be an exciting weekend of NBA hoops. Not just NBA, college basketball is back, baby. I'm going to turn the hat around for the people that watch. Go Duke Blue Devils. We are back. Let's go. We got the Boozer Twins. Go Blue Devils. But as I always say, be sure to stay safe, take care, and I will see you next week. Peace.